Uh, as those of you know that, oh, thanks for recording this, Nate. As those of you, as a number of you know, the catalyst for these workshops was last year during the Catalyst Awards, when there were some comments that some of the finalists were sort of more focused on the underlying science of their idea as opposed to the ultimate product, and especially the path how to get there. And so we created these workshops primarily for this year's Catalyst Award finalists, but we invited other folks too. And we're really, really lucky that we have Darren Cooke speaking to us today. Darren's the executive director of the relatively new Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center at UC Berkeley. He's also on the faculty of the Haas School of Business. He runs the bio track for Berkeley Skydeck. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Berkeley Skydeck, I encourage you to check it out. And if you ever get a chance to visit, it's the tallest, it's got the most unbelievable view in the entire Bay Area because it's the tallest building in Berkeley. And they have views of all four directions. Darren's also with the Life Science Angels, where he's been for many, many years. And interestingly, Darren did go to UC Berkeley. He's got a master's in engineering from UC Berkeley. And then he went to law school, went to Columbia Law School. And one of his first jobs, I think before law school, because I'm trying to guess how old he is, was at UCSF. So UCSF, 30 years ago, Darren was an employee doing medical device product development in the ear, nose, and throat clinic, specifically with a focus on developing novel cochlear implants for hearing loss. But of particular note to me, Darren teaches for NSF I-Corps, and that's what he's going to be talking about today. And to not, take anything away from what he's saying, there are both regional I-Corps and there's national I-Corps, and Darren teaches for both of them. I was lucky early this year to audit one of Darren's regional I-Corps courses that I can just super highly recommend, because if you're auditing it, it's a 9-hour thing. It's 3 hours over 3 days within a single week, and unbelievably educational for me. For the people that are actually taking the course, there's a little bit more work they have to do, and I think Darren will get into that. And for those folks that actually take the national I-Corps, it's a greater commitment. Darren's going to be telling us about it, but I look forward sometime, maybe, hopefully, taking the national I-Corps. And so without further ado, Darren Cooke.
All right. Well, thanks, Charles. Hey, folks. Nice to meet you all. So you sort of heard about who I was already, but I'm Darren Cooke. I run the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center at UC Berkeley. I teach at Haas. Let me get this going. And as Charles mentioned, I teach the I-Corps program, AKA Lean Startup, AKA a customer discovery course, AKA market needs finding course. I teach a special version for life science teams, just because that's my world as well as yours. So I'm going to go through in a kind of a sprint, a whole overview of what is this concept of customer discovery, why should you care about it, how do you apply it to your world. So let me jump right in. First, a little bit about me. Charles already mentioned this. I run the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center on the Berkeley campus, a virtual center that ties together all the resources. We have a ton of resources. I work to tie them together, but I also put on programming, including the I-Corps at LSEC. LSEC is my center. So this is the life sciences themed 1-week class. I teach an MBA course, an undergraduate course, the bigger I-Corps classes for the NSF and for the NIH, which are 7 weeks or 8 weeks long, 100 interviews. You don't even know what I'm talking about yet, but it'll become clear the significance of this 100 interview concept in a moment. I chair the bio track at Berkeley Skydeck. I've been an IP attorney, as mentioned. Yeah, you know what? I was a grad student at Berkeley, and I decided that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to law school. So Heck, I'm in law school. Let me brag a little bit. I just added this in just in the last minute while Charles was introducing me. We're building companies now at Berkeley from ideas in academic labs. 100K grant from me, which is very much like your Catalyst Awards. 200K investment, literally investment into a new company from the Skydeck Fund. And in exchange for that 300K, the teams have to do a bunch of stuff. They get to do a bunch of stuff. They get to go through the Skydeck stuff and get access to advisors and workshops and on and on. Crucially, they also are required to participate in I-Corps. You can see it's the second bullet point here. So we've already formed 3 companies. It blows me away that these are 3 thriving startup companies. Some have hired CEOs. They're all fundraising. They're actually all doing quite well, even in this environment. These were ideas in academic labs in March. And it's December. So super proud of this current crew. And point being, they all did I-Corps. All right, so I'm gonna have a quiz first. What in the world can go wrong with your life sciences startup business model? First, in chat, hope everyone has their chat fingers ready. What percentages of startups don't make it? What have you heard? 50%, 99%, what is it? Looking for guesses, 90, 95%, 98, 90. Yeah, whatever it is, it's a huge number, right? And the funny thing is, it's actually really hard to get an exact number because it depends on how you define startup and how you define fail and that whole thing. However, yeah, 90% seems to be what most people gravitate toward. There we go. 90%. What do you need to know about the other 10%? But why? What's happening? What? Now we're lucky because once you have a failed startup, you can just go ask them, like, well, what happened, right? What went wrong? And interestingly, CEOs of startups that didn't make it will tell you. So turns out it's from lack of customers than lack of anything else. And we know this because post-mortem analysis, 101 failed startups, self-reported, the CEOs are saying, yeah, we were building something that not enough people wanted. Like, what in the world? Or they ran out of cash, which in most industries, maybe not so much life sciences, is, yeah, you were building something that not enough people wanted. Or guess what? Your investors realized you're building something that not enough people wanted and won't give you more money. So, and there's other legit reasons for a startup to not make it, but vast majority is because there's just not enough there in the market. Huge difference with respect to biotech and medtech startups, which I'll address in a minute, because there's multiple stakeholders. But even so, the same thing applies. Let's look at some examples. Subscription watch service, $140 a month. This is a real company, right? This is a screenshot. What do you want to guess? What happened with this? No, of course, it ran out of money. Not enough people were ponying up $140 for a different watch. The super sensitive, internet connected, that's a plus. Smoke alarm, right? The copy on this website was so earnest. It said, look, in a house fire, every minute counts, right? Which, yeah, of course, no one's going to debate that. But were enough people unhappy enough with their smoke alarms and so afraid about the prospect of a house fire to trigger it a minute early that they're going to take the old one off the ceiling and put this one on? And no, of course not, right? They ran out of money. And so you're probably thinking, well, those are dumb and you're not working on dumb things. What about if there were an app that connected cancer patients with clinical trials and experimental therapies? Wait, that sounds important, right? Yeah, a lot of people thought this was important. $90 million or perhaps $100 million went into this company. Run by a smart guy, Will Polkinghorne, Rhodes Scholarship, Harvard Medical School, faculty at a cancer center. This guy knows the space, right? So he flogged the heck out of it. War on Cancer, there's an app for that. He was everywhere, including, I think if you look closely, in Canada. I don't know why, but still, yeah, this is a big deal. This was a well-funded, well-built, well-promoted company that went out of business. Wait, what? Hold on a second. How do you burn through $90 million for like a software application, right? Yeah, it was 2 or 3 years in the building. And then for it to launch and fail 2 months later was fairly spectacular. What happened? Not making money fast enough to convince investors to give it more money, right? They're like, oh, okay, we're not going to keep re-upping you. And then it died. But here's the deal. They had 30 cancer centers on board. They had partnerships with NCI. No one was paying them, right? There's the fundamental problem with the business model when no one is actually paying you for the service, right? Certainly this was important to cancer patients and perhaps to the doctors and pharma companies, but no one cared enough to actually pay the company that tied them together for the service. And it went out of business. All right. So I've been teaching this, you can tell by the date, for 5 years. Every time I go through this, I stop and I say, does anyone know Will Polkinghorne? Right. And I wait for someone to fess up and etc. I've been unscathed until just a couple weeks ago on this example. Unbelievably, in my last I-Corps LSAT class, one of the participants said, I know the guy. I worked at Driver. I'm like, oh no, it's finally happened. So apparently he doesn't know him that well. But I just live in fear that someone's like texting Will right now. It's like, hey, Will, some jerk is talking about you in a presentation. So anyway. But how do you avoid all this? First, let me give you a little bit of inspiration for why you should be inspired for what I'm about to teach you. Investor pitch. Wait, fantastic, right? We're already getting to pitching investors. Yeah, so this is 10 slides boiled down from, I see hundreds and hundreds, thousands of pitches, probably 1,000 pitches a year. But this was really inspired by, I had to sit down and read 100 decks in one sitting just because I had to pick 5 that I wanted to meet with. And I got to the end of the 100 decks, and this is probably 2017. Thought, what was it about the 5 that I picked that were compelling? And I distilled it to these 10 points. So, but this is really not just a pitch to investors, right? This is a pitch to anyone who you want to convince you're doing the right thing, right? You know, collaborators and employees you want to get to join you, but crucially yourself, right? You don't want to be wasting your time. All right, 10 easy steps. The first 5, the makers and breakers of the deal. If you can't prove that you've nailed the first 5, you don't have a company. Number 1, problem. Obvious, right? Yeah, not so obvious to most companies. You wouldn't believe how many companies start with the team, the tech, their IP position, something. No, we want to know what's the problem, even if it's, it's like well known. What is the problem that you're working on? And then number 2, it's huge. And again, even if diabetes is a huge problem and everyone knows this, we want to see the numbers and the geographic scope and the number of patients and the dollars and whatever. It's a huge problem. 3, and again, this is getting into the world of blindingly obvious, right? You've solved it. Okay, you have a problem, it's huge, and you have a solution to the problem. Yeah, this is where we want to see the data. It literally solves it. It works, or you're pretty far along. This is a fix to the huge problem that you just teed up. And number 4, it's exceptionally good, right? Whatever other people, if this is a huge problem, everyone's working on it, right? So how much better are you than the status quo? What other people are doing in other labs, other startups, whatever it is, you got to leapfrog them. Investors are literally looking for 10x on this slide. We want you to be 10x better before we're excited. So, and then number 5, the hardest one of all, and the first set of the 10 slides, the solution's irresistible to somebody who's going to buy it from you at a profit. Right? So this is the business model. And this is where in life sciences, regulated and reimbursed life sciences, it gets super complicated, right? But we want you to show us that you understand not only that it's complicated, but you have a path through. Second pop quiz. Who are the 5 parties in the regulated and reimbursed life sciences space marketplace that have to be an enthusiastic yes for a new solution to be adopted? There are 5 different, yes, the patient is one of them. Charles, you know this already because you've seen all this. You could just rattle it off: the payer, the provider, the doctor, the FDA. Yeah, you guys got it exactly right. I kludge it a bit because I want them all to start with the letter P. But yeah, this is the new life sciences venture canvas that I've been using in I-Corps now, we want you to find answers to each of these questions in the boxes, right? The patient, provider, payer, partner, and permitter all have to be not just a grudging okay, but an enthusiastic yes before a life sciences innovation is adopted. First, you want to figure out who are they and what are they doing today? You start with a guess. Who are they? What are they doing today? And then through customer discovery, through interviews, you figure out, and again, you start with a guess, but you figure out what's going to motivate these people, and they are people, to do anything different tomorrow. Coincidentally, I just published a Medium article about this venture canvas today. So if you're curious to see it, you can look it up. It's on my LinkedIn. So part 2 of the 10 easy steps, the value changers. And notice I didn't do anything about IP or team and that sort of thing. Why? Because if you don't have the first 5, you don't have a business. It doesn't matter how great the team is or how solid your patent position is. It's not going to fly. But it is important to have a good team, right? We want to see you have a team that can do it. Regulatory pathway, you've got it nailed. IP is crucially important in your space. Gives you a competitive advantage. You've thought about freedom to operate. What other third-party patents are out there? Investment is going to take you somewhere important. Whatever the ask is, we'll have reasonable milestones. If you meet them, we hope you meet them. They're going to be exciting to us, current investors, and to future investors. And investors are doing this to make money, right? So remind us that there's a history of exits in your space, IPOs, acquisitions, license deals, whatever it is, where other people like us have made money, right? So review, problem, huge problem, irresistible to someone who's going to buy it from you to profit. I mentioned now a couple times, we want as investors for you to prove this to us, not just say it. So show, not tell. How do you do it? I'm going to suggest this concept of customer discovery is where you find the proof. And if you're like me, when I just heard the term for the first time in 2017, I knew exactly what it was, right? Because I knew those 2 words, right? Customer, someone who buys stuff. Discovery, find them, right? It's a biz dev exercise, right? No, unfortunately, the person who came up with the term actually meant it in a different way. Customer is anyone who can affect whether your solution is adopted. So it was the 5 Ps we just looked at. And discovery isn't finding them. That's usually easy enough. It's understanding their motivations. So that's your goal, to understand the motivations of the 5 Ps who have to be a yes. So what is it? It actually dates back to 2011. Steve Blank, who was a lecturer and adjunct at Berkeley and at Stanford, came up with this lean startup methodology. So introduced the idea of customer discovery, not tech interviews, 100 interviews before you build anything. Pair this with the classic 9-box business model canvas. You've got the lean startup curriculum. This became I-Corps. So this is why we use this all interchangeably. Lean startup, lean launchpad, sometimes some people say, and I-Corps are the same thing. So it's actually the same curriculum of needs finding, interview, and iteration. So, but why did I say not tech interviews? You're going to learn more about this in a second. Not tech interviews. You're going to go out and talk to experts. Don't you want to talk about the tech? No, they don't care. They only care about their own problems and needs. They don't actually care how you've solved it technically. They probably do care if they're experts. They're going to love to dig into it. But that's not the role of customer discovery. And teams are totally sidetracked by this. The hardest thing for teams in a customer discovery I-Corps class to learn and to internalize and then practice is when you're talking to experts, you don't tell them about your idea. Wait, I know. What? Yeah, let me just sidetrack. You know why? This was so obvious when I went to a conference, the American Psychiatric Association conference. I was on a panel. There was a panel before mine with psychiatrists who have created apps. I don't know. It's a panel of doctors, right? Uh, and so these docs were up there talking about their experience creating apps, like as startups, I guess. And this one doctor, she said, you know, she had this idea. I don't even know what the idea was. She told all her clients about it and her colleagues about it and her patients about it, and everyone just loved it. They loved it, right? And she was so inspired by that feedback because she talked to so many people that she rushed and had people code it up, and it's on the App Store now. And she said, no one's using it. And she doesn't know why, right? Here's the thing. Everyone in the room knew exactly why. It's because she's nice. And she was telling her friends and colleagues about this idea, and they all said, that's amazing, right? Of course, that's what happens. It's human nature. So yeah, your goal is not to do that, because as soon as you tell anyone about your idea, they're going to love it and you'll feel validated. But that's not the point of this exercise. The point is to test business hypotheses in a canvas. This is the 9-box business model canvas. You can use the 10-box life sciences venture canvas, whatever fits your company better. And what do? You guess something, you go and you talk to people, you reformulate your hypotheses, you retest, etc. All right, we're all scientists here. What does this sound like? Yeah, you know what it is.
Situation. Now I'm going to discuss how we would look for a new law. In general, we look for a new law by the following process. First, we guess it. Then we well, don't laugh, that's really true. Then we compute the consequences of the guess to see what, if this is right, if this law that we guessed is right, we see what it would imply, and then we compare those computation results to nature, or we say compare to experiment or experience. Compare it directly with observation to see if it works. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. In that simple statement is the key to science. It doesn't make a difference how beautiful your guess is, it doesn't make a difference how smart you are who made the guess, or what his name is. If it disagrees with experiment, it's wrong. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, so that's all we're doing here, right? It doesn't matter how beautiful your business model is or how smart you are about the business and the field. If it doesn't agree with customer discovery, it's wrong. That's we're just applying the scientific method to business principles here. Yeah, I came up with that. Me. All right, so let's look at what an I-Corps class kind of looks like. We run it Monday night, Wednesday night, Monday night. So it's an 8-day course. It's over the course of a week. 5 interviews by the first night. This is a team from Berkeley. You can see they have a software for HAI detection. They did 5 interviews. They get out and they report back on Wednesday night what their business hypothesis was and what kind of questions they asked. Has the hospital invested in digital health solutions in the past? What kind of solutions? They're not talking about their tech, right? And they learned stuff. Yeah, so research hospitals are more receptive. Okay, on and on. Yeah, here's another one. They're guessing. HAIs are manually detected by combing through patient records. Maybe. They have a higher error rate. Maybe. Again, not about the tech. This is just a business hypothesis where the answer will be important to them. Yeah, how do they track them? Who's responsible? On and on. So that was day 1, 5 interviews. Another team, a splitter for a ventilator splitter for multiple patients. Not for COVID, it's for COPD, oddly. But 17 interviews. The idea was they're going to use these splitters in developing countries, right? So in Africa and India. And this team went out and had a bunch of hypotheses. I love this because it's just so simple. Hypo 1, hospitals in Africa and India use CPAPs to treat COPD. But that's pretty fundamental. But okay, that's their hypo. India, no. Wait, what? I'll tell you, this team came in, they'd worked on this for a year, and they're like, all right, well, that's important to know. Like we were wrong on that. Hypo 2, they experienced ventilator shortages before the pandemic. India, no. Oh man, really? Right. This team was actually really surprised just 17 interviews later. So imagine this team did 17 interviews over the course of a week. If they did 7 times as many, what they would learn about the market. It happens that fast. On the last night, we asked them to put together surprises and insights. Yeah, the problem was something else. It was electricity shortages and all sorts of stuff. It wasn't the ventilator supply. It was news to them. They came away just blown away. So this is what we do in an I-Corps class. So in summary, not about finding customers, anyone who can influence whether your solution's adopted. Discovery isn't finding them, it's understanding them. And the process is super easy. Right? You guess it's something relevant, your hypo, you find people to talk to who can prove or disprove it, interview, and then you understand where you got it right and wrong. Hopefully you got it a little bit wrong. Yeah, and guess what? The NSF is watching you, especially in a 7-week program. They watch the teams go through this. They spend a lot of money on these programs. I didn't realize Charles wanted me to talk about the national program, and I'll have to do it just like live without a slide. But I'll tell you, NSF runs 12 national programs a year. 24 teams go through it at once. 6 instructors per session, 100 interviews. I mean, this is a big outlay. Every team gets $50K to do it. Teams are not paying to do it. The NSF is paying the teams to participate. So this is millions of dollars being spent on this. They really, really want you to get stuff wrong, which is the most counterintuitive thing when you're dealing with the NSF. Their metric of success is how wrong you were, because that means you're making your business idea more right. I know it's hard for people to admit that to NSF, but to get over it. All right, best practices. If you're inspired that you want to go out and talk to 100 people, 100 of the 5 Ps, to understand who they are, what they're doing today, and what motivates them to do anything in the different in the future. How are you going to do it? Right. Well, let's run through it. First of all, why so? I keep mentioning 100, right? Like, what in the world? 100 interviews over the course of 7 weeks. That's busy. And it is, yeah, 15 a week is expected in a national I-Corps program, or any I-Corps program. We do 15 interviews in the 1-weeker. So data drive the results is the big thing. Like, you need, how much information you get from one data point? Not much, no, nothing. You get a point, right? 2, you get a line, I don't know. Yeah, you need data before you actually see a pattern emerge. You're also going to burn a bunch of hypos in the beginning. This is the reason you don't want to go and talk with the head of R&D at Roche as your first interview, because you're going to wish you talked to her like 50 interviews later, because you're just going to know so much more. So, but the main thing is the pattern analysis and seeing something emerge from the data. 1 interview, what do you see? Not much. 10 interviews, what do you see? Anyone could just shout it out, or you could type with your chat fingers really fast. I know, yeah, it's a bunch of black and white dots, or a bunch of black dots, right? 20 interviews, what? 30 interviews. Does anyone see anything yet? No. All right. I don't know if you can see my thing, but it's a Dalmatian, right? There's the head, the collar, the leg, the back. Consistently, teams doing a longer version format of the class will have an epiphany around interview 30. It's almost like magic, where they'll come in and they'll say, oh, how in the world did we not know this before? Yeah, our idea was a dog, or whatever it was. Genuinely surprised. And it's interesting, now that I've seen hundreds and hundreds of teams go through this process, it's no longer a surprise to me that they're surprised, because it's like clockwork. All right, so you get out there. First of all, how are you going to find these people that you even want to approach? Many of these people you're approaching is by cold email, by the way. Give you examples on this in a sec. Yeah, brainstorm broadly. Think about, like, who in the world? We do an exercise in I-Corps where we make you brainstorm with an ecosystem map, but, talk to your friends and talk to your strangers. Other people have different ideas. And then what you do, you hit the internet. Hi, yeah, this is where all the data is. LinkedIn, old conference minutes, PubMed, Facebook and Slack groups. Right, I know. Let me pause on this. Especially if you're tackling the first P, patient, first, and you want to understand this that stakeholder. There are disease-specific groups on Facebook, which teams in the past have found to be really welcoming to people who want to just zoom in and talk to them. So I know it's hard to believe. Someone actually said, he literally put his phone number in a Facebook chat group around a disease condition, and his phone just started ringing. Like, the interviews came to him, right? Yeah. Public Slack group? Never heard of it until there was a team a couple of years ago who wanted to talk to cardiologists. It's striking out. No one was responding to his emails. And, how are you going to find him? He found him in a public Slack group, which I didn't even know was possible. And yeah, made friends, chatted with them, got a bunch of contacts. Better yet, ask for a warm intro, right, from your network, from your cohort mates. You can see people on LinkedIn, who knows who, that kind of thing. You're going to get better response rate if somebody actually refers you to, like, what is a stranger, right? You're mostly talking to strangers here. Go to where the people are. This is the classic way of getting interviews in I-Corps. We had to suspend it during COVID, but it's back. You could go to a conference. You go to a rooftop party if you're in in the solar space. Look at they look so excited. They're going to love talking to you, right? Yeah, you find the events and you go to where the experts are and you talk to them. So this works. Create a survey, right? Learn about hand sanitization during COVID, right? Take the results lightly. We don't let you count surveys as an interview count as part of the 100 interviews. Why? Because you can get people to say whatever you want with a survey. However, what if the people who respond to the survey, you have a question at the end, you're like, hey, do you love this topic? I would love to chat with you live. This guy, Luke, got a ton of interviews this way. I'm not sure he ever gave anyone $100 though. So, yeah, you can always reach out to people over LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever. The response rate we've seen from hundreds of teams doing this is abysmal, right? No one responds to LinkedIn in-mail things. However, once you figure out who's someone's name and where they work, we had a team in a cohort, or a bunch, all the teams just sort of got glommed onto this. Email Hunter was the database they were using, that you could find someone's real email address really quickly. So, and that's what you use to reach out to them. So if you want to get their attention via email, start with your own natural appeal, right? You're a student at Berkeley, you're in a market needs finding class, you're just learning. Even if you're the expert, for the moment, they're the expert. Ask for 15 minutes, settle for 45. Why do I say that? If you're doing this right, the other person won't stop talking. It's like magic. If you're obsessively fascinated with someone else's world, they don't shut up. It's funny. Be clear up front. You're not selling anything or looking for investors. This did happen. A team from Skydeck was just striking out. They want to talk to neurologists. They're sending an email. I looked at their email. It's all about them, right? What's that? People are going to think like, oh, you're just looking for money or you're looking to make a sale, right? I'm just going to delete this email at this point, even though they really were trying to do customer discovery interviews. And you start with them. Internet sleuth, find a connection, heard that she's an expert, saw his paper, referred by. You don't even need a warm introduction. If you just say, yeah, Charles Hart told me I should talk to you, that person will be like, Charles Hart? Oh, fantastic. I'll talk to you then. That works. Here's a real email. This, I changed some names and some details just because, to protect the innocent. But yeah, this was a real email, at least 95% of it, from a team at Skydeck trying to do customer discovery that got a 0 response rate. Joan Smith, CEO and co-founder of Nuco, early stage startup revolutionizing ice cream production through sustainable fermentation using engineered fungi. They were using engineered fungi, but for something else. The real company. Still in our early stages, we're eager to gather insights from industry experts like yourself and challenge our business model to ensure the delivery of top quality solutions for potential customers. Blah, okay. Extensive experience, add incredible value to us. We truly appreciate, right? If you're available, I've included my Calendly link for scheduling a 30-minute call. They got 0 signups, right? They sent this out over and over. No one was clicking the link. And number one, that's kind of a hot topic, right? A hot button issue, just jamming your Calendly in there. What about this? How about Charles Hart, or he's famous too. I guess Charles Hart told me you're a leading expert in ice cream production. I learned a ton from a quick conversation, right? I follow you on LinkedIn, love your posts. One team in really, truly had someone on their one I-Corps team had someone following people on LinkedIn and Twitter and literally just referring to posts like that. Tell you what, if someone refers to your post in a cold email, they respond to you, especially the one last week about the ice cream production, insightful, learned so much. Flattery gets you everywhere with these, right? I just read your paper in Nature, blown away by the findings. Groundbreaking research, right? Yeah, people love that stuff. Even if you're like, oh, come on. Yeah, you're like, oh, come on. Yeah, that's great. Agree with you. So founder of Newco, UC Berkeley startup, ice cream production, same stuff, right? I'm not selling anything or looking for investors. Important to make that statement. At the moment, I'm taking a market research class at Berkeley. Grateful to learn from your uniquely relevant ice cream industry expertise. 15-minute call. We want to be sure we're building something the ice cream world needs. Your expertise will help. If you're available, assume everyone you're reaching out to is like super high up and they have an executive assistant, right? Like, yeah, happy to work with your EA to find a time, even if they don't have one. Or your online scheduler. I'm happy to look at your Calendly. Or if it's easier, maybe you could just use mine, right? Yeah, this blew up like a year ago where a big debate about could you ever put your Calendly in, which is an online scheduler, right, in a cold email? A lot of people said, absolutely not. I think this is the way to do it. All right, so if all else fails, you're trying to get these interviews, what do? Here's one. Hang out in the parking lot. True story. Team at Berkeley wanted to talk to someone at Genentech, couldn't get anyone on the phone or through email, whatever. And I said, oh, you guys are in luck, right? Because you're in Berkeley and Genentech's in South San Francisco. You just go there, right? And they have multiple buildings and people walk between them. They said, well, that's crazy, right? Because we'll probably get arrested or something. I said, well, how badly arrested would you be, right? I mean, it couldn't hurt. So they came back on Wednesday night, super excited. They're like, you're not going to believe this. Okay, so we went to South San Francisco, and you're right. Genentech is huge. They have a bunch of buildings. And we stood there and we talked to people as they walked by. Someone called security. We had to go to another place, etc. Everyone was blowing us off until one person didn't blow us off. And he stopped and he said, oh, you know what? I'm not the person you want to talk to. She's in this building. let me take you in and introduce you to her. It worked. They actually got the interview they wanted just by standing there and talking to people. Trap a doctor in an elevator. This did happen. Yeah. Good thing that the CEO was super friendly because that could be annoying. But she talked to pulmonologists that way. Pick vegetables with a farmer. A team from MIT with a fertilizer tech actually did this, right? Just say, hey, I'll volunteer to help you. Pretend you had an appointment. The sleaziest way of doing something that I would not recommend. A Berkeley professor did this and bragged about it, right? Yeah, he shows up just bluffing, right? It's like, hey, I'm here for my 2 p.m. appointment with Dr. So-and-so. And the front desk is like, well, there must be a mistake, right? Because we don't see you on the calendar. And he says, well, it's on my calendar. I don't know what could have happened, right? You know what happened. The front desk person said, well, you came all this way. I'm sorry about the confusion, right? Total bluff. Yeah. So you open, thank you for taking time today. My name is so-and-so. I'm at a place, porcupines, whatever, you're the expert. Everyone knows how to start a conversation, right? So I don't have to go over in detail. However, what will happen every time is because you're now talking to someone who's an expert and you've buttered them up. They're going to say what? Hey, you're right. I am an expert in this. What are you working on? Because I could probably help you with it. Uh-oh, what's going to happen? You're going to say, oh boy, yeah, let me tell you about it. The conversation after that point will only be about your thing. It's going to be your app. It's going to be you're the psychiatrist with an app, right? And they're going to love it, inevitably. You deflect it. Say, hey, I'm happy to tell you about it, but I don't want to take up this limited time. We only have 15 minutes, right? We can discuss it at the end if you're still interested. This happened to me. I teach this. I've taught it for years. A colleague of mine said, hey, he's working on some project. He's doing an I-Corps class and he wants to interview me about my experience mentoring startups. I'm like, okay, yeah, I mentor a lot of startups. I'm happy to talk to you. So what did I say first? Keeping in mind, I teach this. I said, hey, Vivek, because that was his name. What did I say second? What are you working on? I could probably help you with it, right? Like I was setting him up to spill the beans. He did it right. He's like, whoa, no, hold on. I'll tell you at the end. I want to learn first about your experience mentoring startups. And then he proceeded in our 15-minute meeting to ask me questions and just hang on every word I said and scribbling notes. 15 minutes turned into 60 minutes. We both had a hard stop. We both had to leave. I never learned what he was working on. And here's the thing. I loved it so much, this conversation, because it was about me, right? And he's hanging on every word. What did I actually say? I said, hey, Vivek, we should totally do this again, like next week. He never followed up on that. We never had a follow-up meeting, but I was so jazzed. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to have this meeting again. Here's the thing. If you're doing it right, people love talking to you so much, they will give up their friends to you. And that's the way a lot of people get later interviews, is because, you know, you're talking to people who are like, you know what, you really need to talk to my friend over here. So, all right. Listen carefully. You're looking for problems, needs, desires. You're not describing your product or idea. Why again? Let's look at this in a different way. What you control in your tech space is here on the x-axis, right? Hopefully it's exceptional, 10x better than anything else. What you don't control in your market is the scope of your customer's problem, right? This is what you're trying to figure out in these customer discovery interviews. Hopefully it's huge. The problem is, if you're talking about your tech, you're just talking about the x-axis, right? You lose the opportunity to learn about the y. So yeah, talk to someone about themselves. They'll listen for hours. It's true. They really do. Drilling down, stay on subject. You want to test your hypotheses here. It's your goal is to keep the conversation heading in the right direction. Say you had a toast technology, right? You may be like, hey, what do you eat for breakfast? Right? And they are off in the weeds saying nothing more about, like, only about bacon. Well, it's your job is to be like, okay, sounds you like bacon. What else do you eat for breakfast? Right? Eggs? Okay. What else? Toast? Like, fantastic. Let's talk about toast. See, it's your job to do this. However, you don't want to start with toast, right? Because you're on the lookout for something bigger. You're on the lookout for something, a big problem in your space. And it could be that if you started just like right in your particular spot where you're innovating, you're going to miss it. So what does this look like?
I meant with your future, your life.
Well, that's a little hard to say.
Ben.
Excuse me. Mr. McGuire.
Ben.
Mr. McGuire.
Come with me for a minute. I want to talk to you. Excuse us, Joanne.
Of course.
Thank you.
Oh, he is
It's just my friend. I look at him and I can't believe it. I simply
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
Exactly how do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics. Think about it. Will you think about it?
Yes, I will.
Enough said. That's a deal.
I meant.
All right. Why did I show you that? Right. Because you're always going to get someone who's off on a tangent where you're like, why in the world are we talking about this? Why are we talking? What's this plastics thing? And we call this concept in the class a Mr. McGuire moment, or a Dr. McGuire moment, or a Ms. McGuire moment, because of this clip. Because everyone inevitably finds someone who you're just like, what? No, like, why does this keep coming up? Here's the thing. If you do 50 interviews and you look back and 25 people spontaneously mention plastics, you may be onto something, right, that you didn't know before. Your goal in this process is to discover the unknown, right? Yeah, the stuff that no one's seen this pattern before except for you. So I kick off Wednesday night's class with like, okay, who had a Dr. McGuire moment? And everyone has something. I'll tell you, when I set up my center, and many times it's just like someone who just went off on a tangent and never saw it again, and that's it. That's an N equals 1. When I was setting up my center, the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center on the Berkeley campus, I did 150 needs finding interviews for the campus. This one person I talked to just would not stop talking about cap tables, capitalization tables, ownerships of shares in a startup. I'm like, Michael, why do we keep coming back to this topic? Turns out he was the only one where that came up, but what if everyone mentioned it? You could be onto something huge, right? All right. What else can you ask? Genuine appreciation, friend of a friend, or a colleague of a friend, or a colleague of whatever it was. Someone got jammed on me where like a colleague of mine said, hey, could you help my friend with this pitch deck? I'm like, I guess, I don't know the guy, but okay. And then the friend of a friend seemed a little bit presumptuous with my time. I thought, he's like, hey, can I talk to you for an hour about his pitch deck. These days, I would never go for that. But at the time, I'm like, well, my friend's friend. So, okay, I'll talk to him about his pitch deck. Started this conversation. We did talk for an hour. We went over the pitch deck. Fair to say, I was annoyed at the beginning, right? Like, why am I doing this? At the end, this guy said, Darren, this was amazing. You're awesome. Like with that kind of verve. What did I think? Like, this guy's all right. Right. I'd help him in the future. Yeah, that does wonders, right? Genuine appreciation. It also helps you get people to give up their friends. Ask for it and their friends. Who else do they know who knows a lot about this topic? Right. Keep in mind 100% about them. This is not about you, no matter how expert you are in the topic. You're going to hear things you don't like, that you don't agree with, that you were disappointed to hear. It's not your opportunity to have a debate and argue about things. You're just soaking up data, right? You don't know anything until it dawns on you. Again, like magic, interview 30, 40, 50 around there, epiphany. Teams will come in and say, oh my God, we had a team from MIT, no, a team from NASA. It was a NASA team, and they had a switch technology to be used in satellites. That's NASA, right? Around interview 30 or 40, they came in super excited. This must be like week 4 of a 7-week class, super excited. They're like, oh my God, it's not the switch, it's the capacitor, whatever it is. Satellite manufacturers had a different problem. They found enough Dr. McGuire's talking about capacitors that they're like, oh my, this is going to be huge. I thought, well, that's funny. Does your switch do anything with the capacitor issue? They're like, oh, no, it's totally different. We're scrapping the switch. They'd worked on the switch for years, apparently, but they just in the first 30 or 40 interviews found something else that they were so excited about. They couldn't wait for the class to be over so they can go back to the lab and work on some capacitor thing. So, but what's the biggest trap? Everyone knows what this is, right? You're just going to hear what you want to hear. You're out there and you love your tech so much. You're just going to like, yeah, right on. The funny thing is with this, I teach an MBA course where I have MBA students and other grad students test someone else's tech. We get tech from labs on the Berkeley campus. The funniest thing is there's no confirmation bias now, right? The MBA students don't care, right? They didn't invent it. So this is not an issue for them. It's an issue when the inventor herself is doing the interviews. What does it look like?
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Well, Lloyd, that's difficult to say, and we really don't...
Hit me with it. Just give it to me straight. I came a long way just to see you married. Just least you can do is level with me. What are my chances?
Not good.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Yeah, this happens, right? How do you avoid that? Well, 4 ears and 2 brains help, right? What if Lloyd has his friend there? He'd be like, dude, you're not hearing this right? It genuinely does help to have multiple people on these interviews. Just be aware, like really critically think about, is this what I'm hearing? Or rely on the teaching team to push on you until you get beaten out of you. True, this sounds like a setup for a joke. It wasn't a joke. 4 Ivy League pulmonologists from Penn. 4 guys, 30-something guys from Penn, pulmonologists, started taking an I-Corps class, which is unusual because normally the I-Corps teams that do the national program are pretty diverse in terms of like age, experience. There's a mentor and this sort of thing. These were like 4 of the same guy, right? Yeah, confirmation bias dream team. They almost quit. We almost kicked them out. It was rough because they kept coming back. They're like, we were right again. Like, oh, you guys were right again. I'll bet you were. So we talked to 15 more COPD patients. No one is happy about having COPD. And our thing is going to work. So what we do? The teaching team had to force them to go talk to other people and purchasing committees at hospitals and contract manufacturers and regulators, and just to understand the space, right? The other P's. They just kept talking to the patient part. They missed everyone else, the payers, right? It used to be in NSF I-Corps, we would have teams stand up at the end and put on the screen, the final slide would be go or no go. We stopped that. It was a bit more subtlety now, but it used to be go, no go. This team was a no go at the end, right? Unbelievable. No team was more confident coming in and to end up to be a no go at the end. All right. So with that, I'm happy to talk about, answer any questions about how you could yourself experience this program if you are interested. I teach this. I'll be teaching it next again, the life sciences version of it, March 18th, 20th, and 25th on Zoom. Unfortunately, we're still doing it on Zoom just because, frankly, it works just as well. And it's pretty flexible for people. So applications for that class will be in February. That class is a prerequisite. If you're interested in doing a 100 interview national I-Corps program, you have to take a class with me, or we teach it 16 times a year at Haas, but we have to you have to take a week-long class somewhere to be nominated by the local node. Your local node is Berkeley, UCSF, and Stanford, but it's headquartered at Berkeley.
Darren,
yes,
thank you so much for that presentation. It was just so thought-provoking. It really drives the whole message home. The 3 videos are fantastic. I don't think people know that in that middle movie, the Dustin Hoffman movie, that the fraternity house was right next to your Baker Ingenuity Labs. But
it is.
That's okay.
Yeah,
So,
actually, Charles mentioned this. I had to go back and pull up the movie, and indeed, he roars up in his Alfa Romeo and skids to a stop in front of the frat house, right next door to where I work. It's funny, and it looks exactly the same.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. For those that can stay on a couple minutes, any questions for Darren? You can either just, I'm looking for hands, or you can just ask. Go ahead, Oris Knight.
Yeah, Darren, thanks for that. Love the reference to Dumb and Dumber. That was great. 2 questions. So my team has participated in a regional I-Corps elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean in terms of being able to potentially participate in the nationals immediately? And then the other question is, how do you advise folks to split up the 5 Ps in their 100 interviews?
Okay, yeah. So to answer the first, when did you do the regional program?
It would have been August of 22.
Okay. The local node who put that on would be the people to talk to.
Okay.
So and they can advise you whether.
Well, so
or did you do it at Haas?
No.
Okay.
I'm new to UCSF, so
Yep.
I did it in like I guess the Maryland, North Carolina, whatever node. So still speak to them.
I would talk to them first.
Okay.
The next person, Dave Weiner, I could come up with the email, or Charles could send it out. Dave Weiner runs the local node at Berkeley, and he's just the expert on everything regional, national. I mean, this is what he does, right? So, and he's super accessible and friendly and quick to respond. So also reaching out to Dave Weiner on the Berkeley campus.
Sure.
So second, how do you split it up? I recommend most teams start, even though the pulmonologist team seem to be a little over-focused on the patient. Yeah, you start with the patient first just because it's typically easier to do, easier to find. It's sort of like a warm-up to the whole process. I wouldn't spend more than a week on it, though. You're going to be pretty quickly, you just kind of follow the evidence and gravitate to whatever is most interesting in the areas you know least about. So the split up between the 5 Ps is going to be different for everybody. Also in the national program, we are going to still insist you do revenue streams and what customer relationships and all these other boxes that frankly don't really fit with life sciences teams as well, but we follow the 9-box BMC. So
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, NSF doesn't, even though I just came up with this 10-box life sciences venture canvas. And like I said, I just published a Medium article about it today. So fair to say it's not widely adopted.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you just re-mentioned your Medium article, and I'm going to try to look it up. Because the question I had is, you mentioned how the I-Corps really comes out of these two things, the customer discovery of Steve Blank, and then this business model canvas that you alluded to. Can you just briefly mention the advantages of that business model canvas over the old school business plan, in quotes, and how the regional I-Corps and the national I-Corps, differ in terms of the business model canvas?
Yeah, so I have adopted now, because my I-Corps at LSEC class is only regulated and reimbursed life sciences tech, so biotech and medtech. And it never really fit to use the 9-box BMC with teams like that, where they have so many stakeholders that it's just different. It's a different field, right? So I'm now having them use the 10-box life sciences canvas, because it really is the replacement for the customer segments and the value proposition boxes on the bigger BMC, and just organizes it in a more sensible way. The
Wow.
9-box business model canvas goes through all sorts of, like, how do you get people's attention and how do you maintain the relationship and what's the revenue streams? It's still useful to do all that. So I would still recommend, it's not time wasted to go through the 7-week program. You're going to look at these other boxes, if you will, they're business concepts. We just don't have time to touch on them in the 1-week class.
Got it. And I see that Nate Prorock here has posted your article in the chat.
Yeah,
Just so people don't
I
miss it.
posted my LinkedIn post that linked to the Medium article. Right,
cool.
so they're
Okay.
all in there. Anyone who wants to read this stuff, you've now found it.
Oh, I see Sohaila did too. Oh, great. I'm going to click it right now. Okay, thanks for that, both of you.
And interestingly, I just see the last person who liked my post was Nicole Jam, who was an ENT resident at the time. She is, if anyone wants to, sorry, at UCSF, she was an ENT resident when she took the class. She is such a fan of the program now. She actually had put a testimony, or offered to do a testimonial for my I-Corps page. So anyone wants to talk to another doc, I'm sure she'd be happy to chat.
And she's a Catalyst awardee also.
Oh, was she
Yeah,
really?
she was.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Darren.
Yeah, she's great. She really got a lot out of the class.
Okay, I see that we're at the hour. And so unless there's any final questions for Darren, we just want to really thank him again for such a provocative and eye-opening presentation. And we're very appreciative.
Yep, you're welcome. Yeah, happy to do it. So, all right, folks. Thanks all.
Thanks all.